Joining me now is Captain Greg Meyer, Los Angeles Police Department retired. He has a brand new book out entitled Hard Cases. Let's show the cover of it, boys. Hard Cases, Police Use of Force in America. Now, this book is written, by the way, for the layperson, the non-police officer, to try to get a view of what it's like for them on their everyday job where they just want to go back home to their families. It's all video today, by the way. Out on social media, it popped up because I follow a few social media sites that are body camera footage of police officers. And this gentleman, this police officer, was concerned because this lady was following behind this guy really, really close. So he pulls her over to ask her, what are you doing? Why are you tailing this guy so close? And the gentleman that she was tailing so closely turned out was her boyfriend. And he pulled over and he got out of his car and he ran over and confronted the police officer in an extremely aggressive manner and immediately started making physical threats to the officer. I'm like, what is wrong with you? Why are you doing this? The man ended up getting, pepper sprayed and cuffed. And I was so shocked at the amount of restraint that the officer used in this case with the aggression this gentleman was showing him. And at the end, one of the videos is the guy being taken in and the guy's body camera is still going. And the dude's calmed down a little bit and he's starting now to apologize. But the officer is being extremely honest. I've never had to tase anybody or mace anybody in all my years. I've never had to mace anybody until you. And my hands are shaking, he says. I didn't want to do any of this. You scared me. You're a big guy. That's the guy. I couldn't tell, but apparently the guy was pretty big. And he said, you physically scared me. And I'm scared and the adrenaline's pumping because I'm trying to figure out how do I deal with you and my physical safety and the things that are coming through my mind in my training. And I don't want to go there on those things. It was amazing, the restraint. It was something I just happened to see today before this interview. So the timing is pretty important. He joins us now, Greg Meyer. Greg, welcome to the broadcast. Thanks for being with us.
Well, thanks very much, Brannon, and I appreciate being here. I give a special shout out to my good friend for many years, Michael Reagan, who's the one that put me in touch with you, and here we are. He's been supporting the book.
That's excellent. And he has been a great friend to me and this broadcast. And my first radio show to ever host was 1995, the Michael Reagan Show. He let me sit as a guest host. Did that several times and ended up getting picked up by a network that I've been working with now for 29 years, thanks to Michael Reagan. So there you go. What did you make of my opening story there, the video camera from the police body footage? What did you make of what I was saying about what I saw?
Well, these things happen. I mean, police officers sometimes are just driving down the street doing their job, and somebody decides that they're gonna jump out, and we say they're gonna jump into the back seat of the police car in handcuffs. They make it too easy. Most people wouldn't do that, but some people do, and the officers have to be trained and prepared for that. But in the case that you saw, the officer expressed a certain amount of fear, and you bet, all of a sudden, something like that happens, any human being would feel some fear. And of course, police officers are trained to respond.
How fearful are they now, though, because of all the cases we see on TV? How fearful are police officers in verbalizing to you stories and cases? I know you've been a witness in many cases. We'll get to that. But how afraid are officers now in responding with what they've been trained to do? In other words, do they think, oh, if I do what I'm trained to do, I could go to prison myself? Because I have a guy, we've interviewed his wife several times. She's a police officer in Alabama. He was a police officer in Alabama. He shows up on the scene where there are two other officers there. I don't know if he was the senior officer when he arrived, but he seemed to take control of the situation. The door was open. He goes into this townhome, and there's a gentleman there with a gun, and he's holding it to his head. And there's two other officers there. And he begins to tell this guy, you need to put this gun down, but don't you dare turn that gun our direction. Don't you dare turn that gun our direction. I will have to shoot you. And that guy starts to move that gun, and he does. He followed his training, the training that I'm told by his wife, who I've interviewed several times, is still going on. There was some kind of political fight between that police department and some district attorney, something political, I guess. That police officer was sentenced to prison. And we began to interview his wife several times. He's now out because his case was reviewed because of all the attention that got brought. He can't talk now for a couple of years. He's got to wait for things to kind of go ahead and his whatever deal he worked out to expire. Well, we hope to interview him, but his wife is a police officer. He was a police officer. He was doing what he was trained to do, and the training like that still goes on to this day. He had no idea that if he followed his training, he'd end up in prison. So how scared are police officers to follow their training, Greg?
Unfortunately, we're hearing more and more of these cases. One of the lines in my book about this situation says that nobody wants to be the next CNN poster child. You have officers that, unfortunately, because they see what's happening around them, at least in some jurisdictions, if you've got prosecutors that are out to get cops that we've seen in some jurisdictions, people are just kind of backing off and they're not doing the job as aggressively as we were taught a generation or two ago. Exactly because, why get involved if you don't have to? That's unfortunate. That's not good for the public. That's not good for public safety. And we've got to get back to supporting our officers better.
Now, what years were you on the LAPD?
1976 to 2006.
Okay, so you were there during the Rodney King incident.
Well, I was right in the middle of it as an expert witness in the litigation that followed. It was a very tragic event. The events that I write about in the book tend to be, very tragic events. Nobody wishes it would happen. But in the Rodney King case, for example, you have a situation where several years before that, the politicians in Los Angeles had decided that police tactics and training had to change to be kinder and gentler. Unfortunately, they didn't become kinder and gentler. What the officers were trained was much worse. And you end up with a regrettable mess. Those officers, as I lay out in great detail, as I testified before a jury, they were following their policy and training. It was the policy and training that was pushed on the department by politicians that caused that nightmare.
So if the public doesn't like what they're seeing, if prosecutors don't like what they're seeing, then change the policies and the training of the officers? Is that what you're saying?
Well, in the case, in the Rodney King case in particular, the policy and the training became very, very untenable, and it caused the officers to end up using nightsticks where we had not used nightsticks in those situations before, and karate kicks where we had not used karate kicks before, because they took away what we called the upper body control holds, the neck restraints, where it used to be very easy to subdue a violent person without injury in almost all cases, and it was the go-to tactic, and it was the training that worked. But politicians decided, oh, no more neck restraints. We can't do that. And you even had, and I detail all this in the book with exact quotes from politicians who were quoted in the Los Angeles Times and other media. You actually had some politicians say, well, it would be more cost effective to pay for broken bones from hitting people with nightsticks than it would using the neck restraint. I mean, this is really crazy stuff, but this is going on since George Floyd, all those years later. Now you have many jurisdictions, some places whole statewide, prohibiting neck restraints, which are much safer than just about any other tactic we have. So there's going to be more injuries, just like we saw after Rodney King. Dramatic increase in injuries after the officers lost their neck restraints. Crazy politics.
So what would you have done that night? If you had been there and confronted Rodney King, what would you have done, or what would you have instructed those officers to do in hindsight?
Well, you'd put a neck restraint on him, except that it was outlawed by policy. I mean, that would be the number one choice. Other than that, they were following the policy and training, which was to use the nightstick, use the karate kick, don't tie up with the suspect. We used to tie up with the suspect, put the neck restraint on him, make them unconscious. They'd wake up a few seconds later in handcuffs, and everything was fine. If Rodney King had a neck restraint used on him, you would have never even heard the name. The videotape wouldn't have even started because the videotape started in the middle of the incident.
Hmm.
But again, I can't say enough about the political decision making that forced the department to change tactics for the worse.
Whatever happened to those officers? I was at some event. I can't remember where I was, and some of them were there speaking. So I was past a couple of them in the hallway. But whatever happened to them and their personal lives, their families? You never hear about them, really.
No, well, there was 4 officers tried in the first state trial in Simi Valley. They were acquitted. Then the federal government got involved and prosecuted them. 2 of the officers were convicted of crimes in federal court for excessive force, and they went to prison for about 2.5 years apiece. I didn't know personally any of them. I don't really know what's came of them after they got out of prison all those years ago, and they're obviously not police officers anymore.
Let's talk about George Floyd. Now that video comes out, and I had to admit to my audience later, I shouldn't have taken the bait because I don't know if other people do the same thing, but I see the video and it's an awkward video because we're not really getting the full picture. The car is blocking, so much of what we're seeing. And so you're being told, oh, he's putting his weight on his neck, he's not able to breathe. And so the initial reaction for many of us, including myself, was, what on earth? Why was that officer doing that? And then we start finding out, wait a minute. First of all, he's doing what he was trained to do, number one. Number two, his weight is still on his back foot. His weight is not on his, leaning forward with his knee into his neck. That's not where the weight's being. And this guy was already in distress. And again, we start going into the coroner's report, the drugs found in his body, all of this. You always have to wait for the information to come out. Of course, the question is, will it come out? Because I think not everything came out related to what was in the toxicology report, what this guy was on. And then, of course, I think he ends up dying from something related to his heart. So he didn't die on scene. He didn't die in the ambulance. He got to the hospital and it was related to his heart. And so the American people, with the media, of course, wanting to portray this gentleman, a white gentleman, in this manner, it fits the narrative. What were your thoughts when you first saw the video come out? Because you have a training and a background that I don't have and many of our audience don't have to respond to it. What were your thoughts when you first saw it?
My thoughts were, why the knee on the neck? And I reached out to 7 other experts around the country and Canada, friends of mine, some of whom are attorneys, all of whom are tactics experts. And I wondered, what's going on with the policy there in Minneapolis that would allow the knee on the neck like that? And none of us have ever seen a policy like that. Their policy was flawed. Their training was flawed. I understand why Officer Chauvin got charged, even though they had to restrain Mr. Floyd for a while. He didn't need to use the restraint for as long as he did. I don't understand why the other officers got charged. I was expert witness for Officer Thomas Lane, who was a rookie in his 4th shift off of training. All he did was hold down the ankles. You can't see it on that cell phone video because, as you said, the car is blocking him. There's many other videos that the public never saw. The officers had body-worn camera videos. There's 2 security videos across the street. As an expert witness, I had access to 80,000 pages of the case and all of the videos. People don't understand how big a struggle there was before you see this cell phone video with George Floyd on the ground, how big a struggle it was to get him in the police car, the big struggle in the back of the police car. They took him out and put him on the ground at George Floyd's own request. That's all on video. It's all detailed in my book, in my George Floyd chapter. There were some huge misunderstandings there. One thing I think is worth quoting in specific detail here is that the medical examiner that did the autopsy, in his preliminary report with his preliminary interview with the state prosecutor's agents, said if George Floyd had been found in his living room alone, dead, it would have just been pronounced an accidental drug overdose because he had that much drugs in him. Of course, the medical controversy rages on. You have different experts saying different things about all that. Again, it's all detailed in the book.
The book is called Hard Cases, Greg Meyer, Meyer. Let me show the there you go. Thank you, guys. You can get it on Amazon right there. Greg, the training manuals, as you say, we're telling them to do this. We've interviewed several people up in Minneapolis, or a few people up in Minneapolis, who have covered this case big time, and even the lady that did the documentary on it.
Liz Collins.
Liz Collins, thank you for helping me there. We've interviewed her several times over the years, and this is in their training. So you say you were not shocked that the gentleman was charged, but again, if this is in his training, why is he being charged? He's doing what he was trained to do. Why not take it up with the politicians or the leadership of the police department? Why do we take it on the officer who the government is trained to do this?
Yeah, again, these types of cases, Rodney King, George Floyd, become so politically charged, and politically elected people get involved and make these big decisions. Derek Chauvin left his knee on the neck for too long after, and the coroner said it didn't have anything to do with the death. But after the person is no longer resisting, you need to stop using your force. I have pictures in the book from the Minneapolis training, some slides from the Minneapolis training showing knees on necks. And that's what's really interesting, is you end up splitting hair over how long is too long and that kind of thing.
So should Derek be in? Should he have been found guilty and sentenced to prison?
Oh, that jury, very political, especially after a riot. Same thing happened in Los Angeles in 1992 after the officers were first acquitted in the state Superior Court trial. Then there was a riot. And so you bet the federal jury convicted him after that. In Minneapolis, the riot came pretty immediately after the incident. And so you bet jurors are going to be swayed by that concern as well. These things take on a life of their own outside of the usual criminal justice system.
Well, I understand. I even read today there's a call for President Trump to pardon Derek of any federal charges. I don't know what good that'll do at the state level, but at least pardon him of the federal charges.
Yeah, hadn't heard that. I don't know what he would do with that.
Mm-hmm. What else do you hope that people will take away from your book?
I think the point of the book was to provide factual information that contrasts with the media-driven myths. I mean, I'll give you one of the media-driven myths on George Floyd. I'll bet you if you told your readers, 99% of them would say, oh, the officer put weight on George Floyd's back, because that's what the media has been telling you for 4 years, okay? Or 5 years coming up now, right? I can tell you that the prosecution's own expert and I agree that from looking at all the evidence, there was never any weight on George Floyd's back. That's a total myth. The officer that was holding the Floyd down in the middle, Officer Alexander King, his knee was below the butt, where your butt meets your thigh. It wasn't anywhere near his back. So that's just a media lie out there that's exposed and proven by the prosecution's own evidence and the prosecution's own expert.
Do you think the goal here, I know there's many goals by some Marxist groups as well, anti-police, cultural Marxist, enemies foreign and domestic to stir up trouble in America. But do you think part of the goal here is to tear down police until they can federalize them? Because I'm concerned the goal is to federalize the police and then even to try to put it under some global standards and taking it away from our local communities and our states. What are your concerns?
Well, that I don't know. Yeah, there's Marxist groups, there's anti-police groups that they don't think there should be any police use of force, whatsoever, which is a little bit crazy, because if somebody's resisting arrest or attacking an officer or running down the street with a gun or something, guess what? There's going to be use of force. One of my lines in the book in the legal section is that I believe that most people wouldn't know a use of force that's legitimate if it punched them right in the nose. They don't know. They don't know how police officers are trained. They don't know what real violence is all about. They know television violence. They know movie violence. They don't know what real violence is supposed to look like. And it's a mess. Have
the body cameras helped or hurt?
I believe overall help, because the overwhelming number of times there's body camera evidence, it shows that the officer is doing the best they can and doing the right thing in a difficult situation. But then you get these big cases where the media picks up the film footage, the body camera footage, for example, and they take a piece of it that looks ugly, and that's what they play over and over and over again, even if the officer was doing the right thing. So it's a mixed bag. Overall, I think they've been good, because when you get into lawsuits and other litigation, the body cameras tend to prove that the officers did the right thing as best they could.
As we get ready to wrap, let me ask you this. If you got cases where the officer's doing the right thing, are you ever shocked when you see video of officers doing the wrong thing and going, oh my, what is he thinking? This is ridiculous. And are we seeing an increase of that? Because here's one of my concerns, Greg. Are we paying police officers enough? I know that we have here where I live, $100 million high school with football stadium and everything else. It looks like something out of a college league. And I know maybe $100 million doesn't go as far in LA as it does here in Tennessee, but $100 million goes a long way here in Tennessee for building buildings and grounding and buying property. And I'm thinking, well, what are we paying the officers? We can have the sports complex for high school. It looks like something coming from NFL or a major top 10 football team for college. Well, what are we paying the police? And I'm concerned that what we've done to the police, making the job very undesirable by many, don't even want to go into that field, and many of them leaving after we've seen the way they've been treated, particularly with Black Lives Matter, the political correctness, and the defund the police. A lot of them have walked off. We've played the videos of many of them saying, I'm done, I'm out. And I don't think my leadership or the politicians that oversee the leadership would back me up. If I did my job and followed my training, I'm out. Therefore, I think we're starting to hire substandard candidates. I look at some of these people and I'm thinking, why did they ever hire this person to start with? Some places are lowering the standards when it comes to tattoos. Some of them are lowering the standards when it comes to past drug use or drug conviction. And I'm wondering, are we testing some of these guys that are all jacked up on steroids? Have we overall lowered the standard and thereby, again, playing into the hands of the Marxists? Because now we're putting people into the field who should never have been there to start with. We put body cameras on them. They do things they should be doing. And voila, now they have the footage they need to continue to tell you how horrible the police are and how we need to federalize the police. And I'm thinking, well, yeah, this is a ploy. Trash the police, don't stand up for the police, defund the police, the good police walk off, then you bring in the substandard people. They do the things that, they should have never done, but that's the goal. Get them to do that on camera and then use that information to see the police are bad. So I guess I want to defend the police as we have that are doing the right thing, doing the job correctly according to their training. If people don't like what they're doing, then change their training. But don't train them and then tell them not to follow their training. But what about the ones that are not doing it right? Are we seeing an increase in unqualified officers because we have turned our back on the qualified candidates?
Yeah, I think there may be some truth to that. I don't have any way to quantify it particularly, but we do see all over the country, I should say in most places in the country, it's getting harder and harder to recruit qualified officers, because it's like, who wants that job if you see officers are going to jail for getting into scuffles that people that put them in jail wouldn't even know how to handle the scuffle themselves. So it is very concerning. And when I see somebody that's doing something that's clearly wrong, it is disappointing. It is upsetting. And the question of are we paying officers enough in some parts of the country? I truly think we've not. We never have. We would attract more qualified candidates, just like in any job. I mean, just like the economy. You get more qualified candidate if you pay them more.
Yeah, economics 101. Now, you're a final question. You're an expert in a lot of court cases, correct? You get on the stand and testify under oath, right?
Yep, I've been over 450 cases in my expert career, and I've testified over 70 of them. I just testified last week in a police shooting cases in Los Angeles, as a matter of fact.
What percentage find the police officers being convicted? Do you know yet?
No, it is increasing, though. I don't have numbers, but I know just from my daily reading and clipping services and talking with other experts about cases, we're seeing officers convicted in situations where, 3, 5, 7 years ago, they never would have even been prosecuted, not to mention convicted. So it's a little perplexing.
I guess you're probably thankful you're not starting out your career now in this environment, right?
Yeah, if it was 1976 all over again, I would have to scratch my head and say, do I really want to do this? In 1976, I really wanted to do that. Now here we are in 2025. These guys and gals out there that are trying to protect and serve their communities are having bigger challenges than we ever had. And they're having to look over their shoulders in ways that we did not.
Absolutely. Well, 1976, I don't know if it was about then or shortly thereafter, Chips, Poncherello and Baker came on the scene. And I think pretty much every American boy wanted to be a California Highway Patrol officer in the 70s, right?
Yeah, I actually knew Eric Estrada. He played Punch in the Chips thing. Used to come around our station a lot with our motorcycle officers. He's quite a friendly guy. Wonderful.
Yeah, he is. Well, that broadcast made the officers look good and made the job very appealing. The sun in California and the environment. I'm not so sure California is as good as that anymore. What the politicians have done to the state, but boy, back then California looked like paradise. Let's go sign up and be a Chips and ride a motorcycle, and that's about the time you were starting out. So that's pretty interesting. Let's show the cover of the book. Here we go. Hard Cases: Police Use of Force in America. Captain Greg Meyer, Los Angeles Police Department, retired, and he's still now testifying under oath as an expert witness. I'm glad Michael Reagan sent me the information, and I'm glad you agreed to do the interview, and I hope the book does well, and I appreciate your writing and trying to help lay people like us understand what it's like on the other side of the badge. So thank you for that, Greg.
Well, thanks, Brannon. The books for cops and the public. Originally, it was just going to be for cops, but then all my friends are saying, "No, I'm interested in all that." So hopefully, it's a good read for people. Thanks.
Well, thank you. And you're in our Rolodex, and as we see cases in the news, we're going to be calling you to get you back on if you'll come back.
Sounds great, Brannon. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Greg. Look at that, folks. Here's the cover. I want to show it again. Get a copy, folks. He sent me the PDF to read. So there you go. Get it at Amazon. Just type in Greg Meyer, Meyer, Hard Cases, Police Use of Force in America. Great book for lay people as well as officers. So maybe buy a copy for yourself. Have a family member that's a police officer or some good friends that are. You might buy the book for them as well. They would probably read it with great interest as officers. Wow, right? There you go. Hope you'll get a copy. Hard Cases by Captain Greg Meyer, Los Angeles Police Department, retired.